Welcome to India's Road to COP26 event. With this event, we aim to leverage the power of influence to mobilize business action. I'm inclined to start today by reminding us all of the findings of 6th Assessment Report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, of August 2021 that has warned that climate change is widespread, rapid, and intensifying, and some trends are now irreversible. While the report suggests that the world is likely to pass 1.5 degrees centigrade in the early 2030s in the absence of rapid emission mitigation, it also indicates that this can still be tackled if the world acts decisively and now. Far more needs to be done, and that too fast, in light of the starkest warning on climate change. Businesses, investors, governments, and people will have to come together to check global temperature rise, keeping it within 1.5 degrees centigrade, and move to net zero carbon economy. Their ambitions and actions must drastically increase. According to Global Climate Risk Index 2021, India was the seventh most climate affected country in 2019. Due to its geographic, political, and economic uniqueness, India and its population will continue to be amongst the most vulnerable to climate impacts. As the world's third largest climate emitter, India will also play a key role in the global response to the climate emergency, and the Indian businesses will be vital in this transition. Today, in partnership with the UK government, which holds the COP26 presidency, we have convened eminent personalities from business, policy, and climate activism in India's Road to COP26 event. We will discuss how Indian companies can be influenced to pivot to environmentally and socially conscious sustainable models in renewables, electric vehicles, and the energy efficient industry. We are here to debate the climate India should desire and work towards for increasing climate action in the coming years, and understand the role of leadership and key influencers in policy, government, civil society, and business for an action oriented transformation on climate. With COP26 negotiations around the corner, this event is here to build momentum for a decarbonized economy, showcasing India's contribution to Paris Agreement. I welcome all the dignitaries present here. We are delighted to have you all today and look forward to the discussions that will follow. We'll hear keynote remarks from Ken O'Flaherty, COP26 Regional Ambassador, Asia Pacific and South Asia. On building policy perspectives on climate action, we are pleased to host Honorable Cabinet Minister of Environment and Tourism for the Government of Maharashtra, Aditya Thackeray, in conversation with CEO Climate Group Helen Clarkson. We are eager to learn about the pioneering work carried out by Government of Maharashtra on climate action and how it sets the highest standards of ambition and commitment by a state government to tackle the climate crisis. The government of Maharashtra has recently signed up for the Global Under 2 Coalition, of which Climate Group is a secretariat, and partnered with Climate Group's EV100 campaign. With Under 2 Coalition membership, Maharashtra is one of the 260 global subnational governments committed to strong climate action, and one of the first Indian government to sign up for EV100 campaign in India to boost corporate adoption of electric vehicles in the state. We also have with us talented Indian actress and young climate champion Bhumi Pednekar in conversation with Ameya Prabhu, Managing Director of NAFA Capital, author, and also a member of advisory group of Climate Group India, voicing the need for concerted, ambitious climate action and role of young influencers in doing so. I welcome the panelists of our panel discussion on creating a climate action culture. They are among the prominent business leaders in India and have committed to ambitious targets on climate groups campaigns, while also taking substantial steps to meet these targets. And a big thank you and welcome to all the participants. Several of you have been supporting our work and have been part of our journey. Welcome all.
COP26 will be a pivotal moment for the world to come together to accelerate climate action. Together, we must place the world on track to reach net zero by 2050. All G7 countries now have NDCs that are putting them on a path to net zero. In the UK's experience, long-term targets drive short-term action. Our 6th carbon budget covering the period 2033 to 2037 will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 78% compared to 1990 levels, the fastest fall by any major economy. Robust emissions reduction targets play an important role in building clean industries. They give companies and investors both clarity and confidence. And in the UK, they've helped us build the world's largest offshore wind sector, which now employs thousands of people. And they will help us meet our target of phasing out coal by 2025 at the latest. India is also starting to seize the benefits of this transition. Its renewable energy sector is the fourth most attractive in the world to investors. India has set impressive 2030 commitments, including the goal of 450 gigawatts of renewable energy. As COP presidents, we have been encouraging all countries to capture such progress in an NDC ahead of COP26 to inspire and drive action. Government action is vital, but action by business and subnational actors backed up by other advocates is also essential. As COP presidency, the UK is aiming to bring nations, businesses and civil society together to achieve the global goal of net zero by 2050. We are building the number of countries, subnational governments and businesses who can push forward clean energy transition, including setting coal phase-out dates. We're working with the IEA to double the efficiency of 4 of the highest energy-using products to 2030: motors, refrigerators, air conditioners and lighting. And we're working with our partners in government and businesses to ensure all new cars and vans are zero emission by 2040 or earlier, doubling the pace of the current transition. Now, these align very closely with the Climate Group's own excellent initiatives: RE100 on renewables, EP100 on efficiency, and EV100 on electric mobility. By supporting these campaigns, businesses will show they back ambitious action and the net zero economy. And the rationale for action is very strong. On renewables, investment in renewable energy generation can turn cost into profit. Solar and onshore wind are now the cheapest source of new bulk power generation, and they allow companies to take control of their energy security. Switching to renewables and joining RE100 campaign is a smart business choice. Energy efficiency improvements will also boost companies' bottom lines, and they'll make them more competitive. Businesses across India can help by advocating for increased product efficiency for high energy products, whether that's motors, refrigerators, air conditioners or lighting. And business can best manifest their commitment to smart energy by joining the EP100 initiative. And finally, electric vehicles are becoming increasingly competitive. Bloomberg New Energy Finance reports that prices will be on a par with conventional vehicles by next year. Electric vehicles will create green jobs, cleaner air and more livable cities. Ahead of COP26, businesses can join the Climate Group's EV100 initiative and support it by switching fleets to electric vehicles, investing in the installation of charging infrastructure and placing requirements on service contracts for EV usage by 2030. We're seeing Indian companies sign up to all 3 Climate Group initiatives, including from hard-to-abate sectors such as Dalmia Cement and JSW Cement, and this sends a powerful signal to global manufacturers. Being green can be profitable, and it's an essential shift in order to stay relevant and competitive in a low-carbon economy. I know many others joining today are taking their own steps on a low-carbon journey, and I'd like to thank all of you for your incredible commitments. The best way that businesses can demonstrate their overall commitment to carbon neutrality and net zero is, of course, to join the thousands of businesses across the globe who are signing up to the Race to Zero campaign. That requires businesses to set ambitious net zero targets by 2050 at the latest and back those up with firm plans. I'm pleased that nearly 35 Indian headquartered companies have already made that bold commitment and have joined the Race to Zero, including Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited, Mahindra Group, Renew Power and Dalmia Cement. So today I urge more Indian companies to join these wonderful Climate Group initiatives, RE100, EV100 and EP100, and commit to the moonshot of net zero by signing up to the Race to Zero ahead of COP26. It's a smart business move as well as an essential step to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And it's a chance for businesses to be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Hello, I have Minister Aditya Thackeray, the Cabinet Minister of Tourism and Environment for the Government of Maharashtra. Hello, Minister.
Hello.
Maharashtra is one of the leading industrialized states in India. It has the highest gross state domestic product among Indian states and union territories. It's home to over 100 million people, the second most populous state in India, and third largest in terms of area. And we're delighted to be talking today about the role India has in the build-up to COP26. So, Minister Thackeray, why is climate and environmental sustainability so important to you and the Maharashtra government?
So by the stats that you've put out, actually, in terms of the footprint that Maharashtra has in terms of industrialization, in terms of the population, in terms of the size, we realize the role we can play as a state, as a subnational government, in terms of climate action, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. Obviously, throughout the COVID lockdown as well, and in the past few years, industrialization has been on the rise across India and across Maharashtra as well. We've got good amount of investment. Global investors see us as a potential state where more and more investment could come in. While we do that, we also realize that our carbon footprint must be much under control. We cannot keep emitting carbon. We cannot keep adding to the carbon emissions around the world. And therefore, we're looking at possibilities where, even though investment is coming in on a large scale, manufacturing industries are being set up, how do we work closely with them? And how do we work with the population of ours, which is also ever increasing, in terms of climate action, in terms of climate mitigation, climate change adaptation. And that is where we really see ourselves playing a big role. Obviously, when you have a state with massive industrialization, a massive service sector, and a massive population, adding to climate action, the impact on the global scale is huge. And that's where we see the highest potential in terms of contributing our effort towards climate action.
Great. And can you say more about how you're leading the charge on tackling climate change, and what's your message to other states and governments globally?
I think one of the things that we have realized in the last 1.5 years in terms of COVID and after taking over government is being led by Chief Minister, Mr. Thackeray, who is a wildlife enthusiast, a conservationist at heart, and leading from the front in terms of conservation and climate action. We've realized that we do not have the luxury of time in terms of climate change action. Most of us believe that we have another 10 years. We call it the last decade of sustainability. We call it the last decade of climate action. But looking at what's happening around us, be it what happened in New York just the other day in terms of the sporadic climate weather event, that's, the monsoons that you had. Not even monsoons, I think it was an off day weather event, but it's flooded New York. That's what happens to us in the last 5 years, at least 2 or 3 times in the monsoons. We've got droughts, we've got floods, we've got hailstorms, we've got unseasonal rainfall. A couple of places around the world have faced heat waves, some of the hottest days ever in the recorded history, and forest fires. If you look at what's happening around, it takes me back to a movie in about 2004, 2005 called The Day After Tomorrow. And you realize that it's no longer the day after tomorrow. Whatever was shown in the movie is happening today. And another realization dawns upon us that it's not just the polar caps that are melting. It's not just the Himalayan glaciers that are retreating. It is happening in our farm fields. It's happening in our cities, in our backyards, in our lanes. We do not have the luxury of time. So we've obviously got off to a great start. We've gotten off to a couple of things that we're doing in Maharashtra. The first thing is, of course, the EV policy that we've brought in just recently. And we're looking at a major transition of our fleet, up to 45% of our public transport to be electric by 2025. Because like I said, we do not have the luxury of time. We're looking at charging stations. But while we, focus on EVs, and while we are part of the EV 100 group, and while we look at increasing our footprint in terms of EVs in the government sector, in the public transport sector, we're also looking at supporting our EVs through clean energy. Because if we don't have clean energy supporting EVs, it's not going to be enough. We need to create an ecosystem of renewable energy, clean energy supporting our EVs. So that's what we are again focusing on. We're looking at almost 25% of our energy needs met by renewable energy by 2025. So that's another thing we're doing. We're solarizing our highways, some of the dams that we have. We're looking at floating solar panels. These are some of the things we're focusing on. Apart from that, just a few stats I could probably throw at you, and there are small contribution towards sustainability. One is, in the past 12 months, while we faced COVID and huge surges of COVID, We've brought in almost 9,800 hectares of mangroves, our wetlands, under protection of the Indian Forest Act. That was long overdue. They were being encroached upon. They were, being dumped with debris. We've got them under the official protection, and now we can, proudly say that these are our carbon sinks that are being protected. We've added to 2 new sanctuaries, 10 conservation reserves in a city like Mumbai, which is, an ever-growing metropolis, growing rapidly at a pace one can't imagine. We've got almost 303 hectares of land declared as a reserve forest. And not just because we have only trees out there, we have an active biodiversity hotspot. We've got leopards, we've got the rusty spotted cat, which is endangered, we've got spiders, we've got flora fauna, which is endemic to that place. We're looking at a couple of things, and we're also starting off with the Maharashtra Sundarabhyan, which is basically focusing on the 5 elements of nature. It started off with something like just our officers of the government focusing on the 5 elements of nature, doing a self-energy audit, transport audit, water audit, acting upon that. But we're now having major NGOs, diplomats, corporates joining in Maji Vasundhara and adding to, trying to get their carbon emissions down. So I think that is a huge success to start off with.
That's great. So much activity, and we're really pleased at Climate Group to be working with you on EV100. And I know Maharashtra is also committed to the Under 2 coalition, and we're really looking forward
Under
to
2 coalition, yes.
with you there. Yeah. What about wider society? So business, government, sports, entertainment, civil society. How do people elevate the climate issue? How do we get it into the center of decision making?
I think for me, what I personally believe is as urbanization grows across India, and even in Maharashtra, we've got 51% of urbanization already happening. 51% of our state is under rapid urbanization. The key is that the climate change action should start from cities, because that is where maximum carbon footprints come from. When we look at urbanization, it is a great thing as a concept, but we need to define what urbanization means. It should involve rainwater harvesting, rainwater percolation, better energy systems, renewable energy, solid waste management, stormwater drainage, recycling of water, and so on and so forth. I think that is where we need to make a big start. Another one we're looking at is, of course, urban forests, because that is where our carbon sinks lie, and where we have pollution coming from is where we need to absorb most of the pollutants, and on whatever scale possible. But whilst we look at our cities and involve our urban local bodies into this whole movement of climate change mitigation and action, we're also looking at a more organized sector, like corporates, like I said, diplomats, like agencies being the police, the army, the other stuff, where you have organized sectors in large scale. That is where really we need to discuss, debate, and look at how we can offset the carbon emissions that we have on a daily basis. So that is another factor we're working closely on, and hope to make breakthroughs very soon on that.
That's great. And let's talk a bit about the youth. They've been such a big influence. And how do you see that in India? How do you see aspirational Indian youth contributing to the climate revolution? And what about language as well? Are we talking about that? Is it a barrier in communicating the climate imperative? How do we work with those challenges?
I think 2 things largely have happened in the youth, especially the people in the millennials, the 20s, the 30s. There's a lot of awareness about climate change, because we've seen climate change happen around us. We've seen weather events, erratic weather events that would never happen around us. In the last 15 years, they've started occurring more and more. For example, Mumbai has seen 2 cyclonic storms on a coastline that was supposed to be safe for the last 100 years. We've never had cyclonic storms, and in 11 months, we've had 2 cyclonic storms hit us. Of course, when you have erratic weather events, you obviously have a lot of damage happening to life and livelihood. And that's where the youth has really, started rallying together, speaking about climate change, getting into protests or actions, be it, urban farms, urban plantations, urban issues with pertaining to climate change. A lot of EVs being bought by the youth, solid waste management awareness coming in. I think that is really important, and that is really crucial for us, because it is for us, the next generation, to have a better lifestyle ahead. When we look at COVID and climate change, it's a double whammy. And the youth has started realizing that if we don't tackle climate change in time, we're going to have economic issues, we're going to have issues with our standard of living, migration, large-scale migration, and especially a country like India, we're going to have a huge economic problem in terms of climate change. So I think that is where the awareness is really building up. Having said that, in terms of course, climate change and communication barriers, I think what we're looking at, and obviously there's an action plan in the next few months, is first we formed a state council for climate change, because it has to start with policy making. When policymakers know what climate change is, how it is affecting us, because like I said, there was still this belief that we still have 10 years for climate change to occur. We still have climate change at the poles of the planet, not in our backyards. Just last year, we've had to give about 14,500 crores as compensation arising out of climate change events in Maharashtra, just one state, one subnational government. So the footprint of that is huge. And we're looking at making our policymakers aware of what climate change means, making the students aware of what climate change means, and take it to the streets, use simpler terms in terms of climate change. Because when we look at terms like 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees rise, we don't really tend to see the implications of it or how serious it is. Because for a normal person, it would be okay, today it's 38 degrees, 1.5 would mean 39.5 degrees Celsius, and that's not too bad on an average. But what it really means for the common man, what it means for the farmers, for the students, for the women, I think that is really important, because in a country like ours, women are going to be largely impacted by climate change. Farmers are going to be impacted by climate change. The common man is going to face huge issues with climate change. So we're looking at simplifying the jargons and taking it to the people in the next few days.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's really important on that 1.5 degrees C. As you say, I always say, if you saw the weather forecast and it was 1.5 degrees hotter than yesterday, you'd wear the same outfit. But understanding how that impacts farming and all the systemic effects that you talk about there, I think that's critical to break through. And finally, 5 Maharashtra cities have joined the global Race to Zero campaign. What's your ambition for the role of cities on climate action as we run up to COP26?
Like I said, it's the cities that are going to lead the way globally for climate action, because climate change mitigation, adaptation in terms of the economic prowess, the population, the innovations and technologies that they can bring in and contribute globally, cities can truly lead the way. And when we're looking at national governments, subnational governments contributing in terms of the global dialogue and discussion, it's the cities that are going to be implementing it. So we need much more awareness in the cities. We need much more implementation of what's being said, what's being signed, because I think it's the time to go beyond messaging now. It's the time to act. We do not have time enough to act on climate change. And let me make a small contribution to the climate group. It's not just 5 cities, but we've got now 43 cities from Maharashtra signing to Race to Zero. So I think that's going to be our contribution to the global fight against climate change.
Great, that's fantastic. And as you know, the theme for Climate Week NYC this year is getting it done. I think that's a fantastic example of getting it done. Thank you so much, Minister Thackeray. It's been really great to talk to you and hear about everything that's happening in Maharashtra.
Thank you, and look forward to interacting much more. And like I said, let's start acting.
Fantastic.
Welcome to the panel discussion on creating a climate action culture. The business community in India is already demonstrating high ambition to lead and invest in climate aligned technologies and solutions. Over 300 companies globally have made over 500 distinct commitments across Climate Group's business focused initiatives, including RE100, EP100, and EV100. These include 25 commitments from India headquartered companies. It is time that Indian companies shift from a unidimensional outlook of bottom line that views profit as supreme to a multidimensional outlook of triple bottom line, where people and planet are equally important as profits. It is time to create a culture of climate responsiveness and make green the new norm. While there is a lot to learn from successful interventions, there are several questions and challenges to be overcome to achieve our collective ambition to tackle climate change. Today, we would ask few critical questions and steer a candid discussion on what lies ahead of us in the run up to COP26 and broader climate ambition in the long term. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the panelists we have with us. We have Mr. E.R. Raj Narayanan, Chief Manufacturing Officer and Business Head, UltraTech Cement Limited. We have Prashant Jain, Joint MD and CEO, JSW Energy. We have Seema Arora, Deputy Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, and Vinod Rohira, CEO, Mindspace Business Parks, REIT. I would like to start with Raj. Very pleased to have you here, Raj. India's largest manufacturer of grey cement ready mix concrete, and white cement, UltraTech has been a leader in sustainability. It is a founding member of the Global Cement and Concrete Association and a signatory to the GCCA Climate Ambition 2050, besides aspiring to deliver carbon neutral concrete by 2050. As the Chief Manufacturing Officer and Business Head, UltraTech Cement Limited, Raj has been instrumental in the success of these initiatives. Before joining Aditya Birla Group in 2008, he worked in leading European companies and as managing director in the chemicals and industrial projects product space. Not only that, Raj has an important announcement to make today, and I would like to invite him to please do the honors.
So thanks very much, for the introduction. The important announcement is obviously about our joining RE100. At Ultratech, we have made great strides in the last few years to make cement and concrete a sustainable building material. We would now be joining the RE100 campaign. We aspire to meet 100% of our electricity requirements from renewable sources by the year 2050. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are extremely delighted to hear this and congratulations on this important commitment, Raj. I would take this opportunity to ask you my first question. What market drivers from a technology perspective and new and existing RE corporate sourcing instruments give UltraTech Cement the confidence that the ambition of 100% RE can be real for India, knowing that there are policy challenges?
Yes, it is an ambitious target which we have taken RE100 by 2050. But we are confident that we will be able to achieve it by 2050, if not earlier. There are a few reasons why we feel that way. So I would first like to talk about the policy issues. The renewable sector in India has seen an impressive growth in the last decade or so. In the last 5 years, the renewables have grown 3 times. India is now the fourth largest renewable player in the world. The Indian government has set a target to achieve 450 gigawatt from the current levels of 90 gigawatt by 2030. The solar power cost has already fallen to 3.3 cents per unit, probably the lowest in the world. So these policy changes would drive the large-scale adoption of renewable power in India. Recently, the Indian government has also introduced a draft policy that would help in faster adoption of green energy. It has addressed the concerns expressed by the industry as well. The policy encourages the large-scale consumers to source all their energy needs from renewable sources. The second important one I would talk about is the energy storage system. It is very difficult to integrate the renewable sources like wind and solar with the grid. It may destabilize the grid as well. In order to prevent this occurrence, energy storage system is introduced as a flexible source. The cost of lithium-ion battery storage, the most preferred option, is also continuously falling from a level of US dollar 1100 per kilowatt hour in 2010. It has dropped down to less than $150 per kilowatt hour now. It is further expected to go down to sub 100 levels by 2024. These would help in improving usage of renewable power as well as driving down the cost. I have a third point to make is about the integration of the storage system with the thermal power plant. During the transition to RE100, we need to integrate the energy storage system with the thermal power plant to take the benefit of the infrastructure. This model is effectively implemented in the US, China, South Africa, and Indonesia. So we will be following a similar model as well. So probably this is another way to reduce cost during the journey towards RE100. Lastly, it is about R&D and digitalization. R&D in the area of energy storage will help indigenous development of ESS. That would drive the cost. In addition, the digital transformation would also help in achieving the target for RE100 by 2050. At UltraTech, we have scaled up our contracted renewable energy capacity by 2.5 times in the last 2 years. So all these give us the confidence that we would be able to achieve our goal of RE100 by 2050. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Um, I think that's very encouraging to hear, and particularly coming from you. My next question is to Vinod. Um, Vinod, an alumnus of the Booth School of Business, Chicago, has been instrumental in driving the success for K. Raheja Corp Group in India. A fine example of his work philosophy has resulted in building brand Mindspace with the idea of establishing world class business districts, which has completely revolutionized commercial real estate in India. Mindspace committed to EV100 in 2020 and RE100 in June 2021 with clear, concrete ambition and action across EVs and RE. Thank you for being with us today, Vinod. My question to you is, what is the motivation for Mindspace Business Parks to take on such ambitious climate commitments on EV100 and RE100?
Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me on this prestigious panel. I think sustainability has always been very close to our hearts as an organization. I don't think we have a choice. It's an obligation as leaders in different aspects of our businesses to ensure that we leave behind a much better legacy for the next generations and the generations after. Coming from the construction industry, we've seen a whole lot of haphazard construction 20, 30 years ago, where you used to see no regard for water, electricity, dust. The method of construction was very primitive. We've come a long way since then, and I think we still have to go a very, very long way. I think sustainable use of natural resources is really, really critical. We have to become really conscious about what we want to do and how we want to approach that consumption, whether it is impacting cost, whether it's bringing in new technology. Sustainability has to be the core of your business. And I don't think it's a choice, I think it's a necessity. What's important is how we can seamlessly weave this through between our environmental, social, and governance practices. For that, we have to develop uh, the culture within organizations, and with newer, younger people getting into the workforce, they need to adapt to this really quickly and make it their primary agenda going forward at the workplace. We were the first Indian real estate entity really to pledge RE100 and committing to that vision of transitioning to renewable energy, just like Mr. Raj mentioned. Policies are setting up, they are coming forward. It's still some time away where we can actually tap that, because in a lot of geographies, you're not able to access renewable energy for your customers who are occupying, primarily in commercial real estate. You have 90% of the footprint is global technology companies. Mind you, they have just about started to ask about renewable energy. Uh, as a distributor of power in certain geographies, we are able to access and provide that. Otherwise, we are dependent on the public utility companies to arrange that for us. Having said that, I'm sure in the coming years, the government is going to help us and work with us as partners to be able to contribute meaningfully to create that larger commitment towards making sure we build the renewable energy resources for our consumers. We have 14 to 36% energy savings in our green buildings. Those were elementary. We started off in 2005 and 6, making the first green gold building. At that point in time, and even 5 years after, customers didn't ask you for that, but we built it nonetheless. Everything we built since 2005 has been a green gold or a platinum certified building. COVID has taught us health and safety protocols are far, far more relevant than we ever thought of those. We want to bring in new layers of efficiency in the health protocol of buildings, and a lot of that is changing in design as well as we speak, to ensure that we can make that difference to the new working era, so to speak. We call it BC is before COVID, and AC, which will be after COVID. Our workplaces will be dramatically different. So whether it's air quality management, whether it is tracking of the common area air quality, consumption of energy, all of the aspects, whether it is becoming smart buildings, intelligent buildings, tracking every aspect of what the consumer is consuming is becoming very, very relevant, and we are very focused on that. I think in the next 5 years, you'll see very different buildings being delivered and a very different ecosystem in the workplace and consciousness in building. So I think that's our target. While 2030 and 2050 is very generous time given to us, our targets are far more aggressive. We want to be able to achieve this much earlier. Similar to what you know of RE100, there will be new norms that will come, and there'll be new benchmarks to capture. So we don't want to be waiting till 2050 to get there. That's all I'll say to your question on this one.
Extremely happy to hear that, Vinod. You've made a couple of very important points, and I'm happy that you are inclined to take up aggressively the ambitions that you have targeted. I also like the point that you made about the huge potential of green transition in the built environment, and also health protocols and efficiency in health protocols around building design and building operations. So, many thanks for those points, Vinod. Next on our panel, I would now like to call upon Seema, Deputy Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry. Seema pioneered the creation of services on sustainable development within CII. She works on designing innovative products and frameworks to build the business case for industry to invest in sustainability and CSR. In doing so, she works with industry, government, and community-based organizations to develop policy instruments, curate collaborative initiatives across sector and stakeholders, and develops innovative voluntary approaches to sustainable development. I would like to mention here that CII is supporting businesses through initiatives such as Race to Zero awareness campaign that focused on business initiatives including RE100, EP100, and EV100. Seema, welcome. How can CII influence the behavior and actions of different stakeholders from the ecosystem, particularly India's MSMEs, who, for obvious reasons, are seldom the center of attention?
Thank you, Divya, and let me thank the organizers for inviting me, and also a very warm welcome to my fellow panelists who have made great points, and happy to be a part of this conversation. Divya, as you mentioned, CII, Large Industry Association, 9,000 plus members from small, medium, and large companies. And we have been for over now 30 years working with our members to chart a journey towards sustainable development. And I'm very proud. I heard most of my members here on the panel say how important sustainability is for them and why they are committing to it. And that gives us so much pleasure, because I remember my journey in CII started 30 years ago when we started to talk of sustainable development, and it was a hard task. But all credit to our members. And that is where CII comes in as an ecosystem player. Your question is, how can CII put the ecosystem together? Very relevant. CII is that platform that actually brings together all the stakeholders. Let me give you an example. You mentioned Race to Zero very correctly. You know, the idea there in CII supporting Race to Zero is bring all members together, bring the other players in the value chain of the members, because when we say Race to Zero, it's not just one company which can make that commitment and achieve it. It's the entire value chain. All the touch points of that company need to be committed to that Race to Zero, and that's where CII steps in, works with the members, helps them build the capacity with their value chain partners, which generally happen to be MSMEs. So to your point, the MSME transition is really critical. If India, and any part of the world for that matter, wants to meet all these targets of net zero or make this transition, it's very critical to work with the MSME sector. In fact, in CII, we have a specific program called the Climate Action Program, or CAP 2.0, which is aimed to bring companies to understand that how can they set their targets, how can they actually work with their value chain, how can they mentor the value chain partners to be able to do this. Also, what CII does is a lot of collaboration. So learnings from one company to the other actually get transferred, so that you don't reinvent the wheel, because there's not so much time. We have code red for humanity, as we all know. So there's not much time. We all need to collaborate. So the power of CII is in collaboration, in bringing the ecosystem players together. Other part of the ecosystem that CII helps with, and I think it was raised by my fellow panelists, is bringing the regulators and the people who decide the policy. So the government is a key constituent of that ecosystem. And CII, with its convening power, is able to bring the government. And I was listening to Raj, and he was talking of the RE ecosystem and what needs to be done still to make sure that the RE ecosystem is enabled. That's where CII steps in. We have a very specific agenda there to work with the government to make sure that the ecosystem, whether it's on RE, whether it's on air pollution, Vinod mentioned about building air quality. We have a huge program on air quality. And all we are doing is bringing the stakeholders together to make sure that all parts of the ecosystem understand the problem, provide the solutions, and the solutions would be policy solution, business model solutions, financial delivery solutions. So this is the role of CII. And finally, final constituent in the ecosystem is the consumer. And I think that's where also CII is trying to play a role. We could do more, I admit, but basically we are also trying to, therefore, through company-led disclosures and transparency and creating rating systems, recognition systems, so that, of course, the B2B consumers can easily see from the ratings and the awards that CII gives that which company is actually on the path to sustainability. But we also have something called a label, which companies can use for the B2C market, and say that how we have taken this journey of sustainability and why the market should reward us. So I think all these constituents of the ecosystem, you rightly said, CII wants to work with them, continues to work with them, and still a long road to go. But happy to be able to contribute in whichever way. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. I'm so glad you brought out these points. There's no doubt that CII is a very strong support to the ecosystem, particularly in ensuring value chain commitment, as you said, and also ensuring multi-stakeholder collaborative platform that CII is. I'm so glad that your response is so succinct, but it brought out all the points that you wanted to make. So thank you very much for that. I call upon now Prashant Jain, who is joined MD and CEO, JSW Energy. So happy to have you with us today, Prashant. Prashant Jain is a mechanical engineer with more than 29 years of rich experience in the industry. He is a persuasive professional with strong techno-commercial acumen and a proven proficiency for driving business initiatives and strategies. JSW Group has emerged as a pioneering climate leader. They are part of India Hydrogen Alliance and have committed themselves against new coal investments. JSW, uh, JSW Energy has also committed to carbon neutrality by 2050. Prashant, how is JSW Energy influencing the adoption of renewable energy to decarbonize the grid, which is a compelling factor to be able to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, about pre-industrial levels to mitigate climate change?
Thank you for having me. So JSW Group primarily is a very large player in capital intensive programs, and therefore we are consuming a lot of energy also in there. And we realize that the world is changing and it's a high time that we need to move towards the renewable energy. And in that line, we made certain commitments like to become net carbon zero by 2050. Also, we signed and we are under validation by SBTi to achieve those targets. And we are also, as a JSW Cement, we have given a commitment for RE100, EV100, as well as EP100 in one go. And probably we are one of the only company in the manufacturing sector to do all three in one go. And all this, we are pretty sure that it is going to happen much early than 2050. In case of JSW Energy, what we are actually doing, we are increasing our renewable portfolio substantially. Today, we are having a 30% renewable energy in our entire 4.6 gigawatt portfolio, which we are increasing to 85%. But more so, we are working on a new age economies, like it was talked by one of the panelists about the intermittency problem of renewable energy, and which we are solving with setting up the large grid-based solutions for lithium-ion battery storage or hydro pump storage. These are these solutions like hydro pump storage. These were used in India earlier for irrigation projects. Now the time has come that these projects will be used for meeting the peak power requirement as well as to solve the intermittency of the renewable energy. And it will be pretty cheap, as Raj also mentioned, that in India, the renewable power is probably cheapest in the world. And I fully agree that it is cheapest in the world. But another thing which I want to say is that it will be the cheapest on RTC basis also by renewable resources in time to come. Recently, some of the generators have announced the plan, and then they have won the tenders to supply renewable power, which is the round the clock at the prices which are unheard of. And so that's going to change the paradigm, and that's where JSW Energy is also participating. The third piece which JSW Energy is working now is a new oil economy, which is the green hydrogen. And as you mentioned that we are part of the Green Hydrogen Alliance also. What we are doing is that we will be building the large projects which will be producing green hydrogen as well as green ammonia, which will be used not only for the industrial application but also for the mobility sector. And in probably 3 to 5 years time frame, you will realize that green ammonia and green hydrogen is new oil. Like you have seen the penetration of electric vehicle, you will be seeing the penetration of hydrogen mobility going forward. Already the trials are on to use the green ammonia to run ships, to run locomotives, and also for the various commercial application. And one thing which I wanted to say is that in the new oil economy, the biggest deterrent was the cost of the renewable power, which has fallen by 80% in last 5 years, and 73% of the cost to produce green hydrogen is only the power. So, and as Raj also mentioned, and I also mentioned in the word in India, so India will be best placed to produce green hydrogen at a most competitive rates. And we are energy dependent, and our imports are primarily from the energy economy, and which will totally shift. And that's what the Prime Minister Modi also talked about, a green hydrogen mission, and to make India as a self-sustainable energy economy going forward. And that's where JSW Energy is also playing role.
Thanks, Prashant. I think I should thank you for bringing in the commercial angle to green transition and also giving us a peep into the future. So, thank you very much. Raj, I would like to come to you now. UltraTech joined EP 100 in 2018 and committing to double its energy productivity. And it has already surpassed its goal well ahead of its target timeline of 2035. UltraTech has made significant investments in energy efficiency across its manufacturing operations, including upgrading clinker coolers, implementing variable frequency drives to manage electricity flow, and introducing new waste heat recovery systems. This clearly demonstrates that businesses can be even more ambitious than the commitments they take. So my question to you is that being one of the largest cement manufacturers, not only in India, but also globally, how would UltraTech Cement like to influence the decarbonization transition of not just the cement sector, but the larger hard to abate heavy industry sector in India?
Yeah. Thanks for this question, Divya. So I'm not sure whether we can influence, but certainly we would like to reach our goal on decarbonization. There are a number of things we have done in the recent past on the decarbonization initiatives. So we have launched the energy and carbon policy. We have also committed to double our energy productivity under EP 100 scheme. We also adopted the carbon pricing policy internally. So all our projects, we adopt the internal carbon pricing. We also joined the GCCA Climate Ambition 2050 initiative, uh, by which we will become carbon neutral by 2050. We are also the first company in India and the second in Asia to raise the sustainability linked bonds. We have also taken SBTi targets. So these are some of the things what we did. But more importantly, in cement, what we are proposing to do, there are two parts to it. One is what can we do better in whatever we are doing. So I would divide that into a couple of areas. One is what can we do in energy, improving our energy continuously by adopting the new technology as well as adopting the digital initiatives. So we think that we can bring down the energy as well. The second is also about how can we move away from the fossil fuels and go into something which doesn't emit CO2. So we are also working on the renewable energy in fuel because cement uses a very large amounts of fossil fuel. So we want to also look into renewables for the fuel to operate in the kiln. We are also using alternative fuel and raw materials. We are using the waste from other industries as our raw material. We are also using the plastics and municipality waste. Today, we use more than 21 million tons of industrial waste as raw material and fuel in our processes. We are water positive almost 4 times, and we use 71 million meter cube we are saving every year. So these are the things what we will do in what we are already doing better and better on what we are doing. But the second part is about slightly futuristic, where we would work on the product development. As you know, cement, by definition, by the chemical reaction, it produces CO2. So, despite whatever you do on reducing the cementitious material, you still have to, you will still emit CO2. So that's where we are talking about new products, whereby we can reduce it drastically, replacing cementitious material. And the second part of it is whatever CO2 is getting generated, can we use the carbon storage, carbon capture and storage, and convert them into useful products? So these are some of the things which are working on our decarbonization efforts on our goal to being carbon neutral by 2050.
Thank you, Raj. Thanks
Thank
very much. Coming to coming to Vinod now. Vinod, my question to you is: how is Mindspace Business Parks influencing corporates and citizens who are working out of its corporate business parks?
Well, for our universe of footprint of commercial real estate, we consume far lesser energy cumulatively than all the other manufacturing plants that we are discussing. So it's far more easier for us. Having said that, I mean, if you see the journey in the last 10 years, on an average, most of the technology companies would require a 1.1 odd kVA per 100 square feet of power that they would require as connected load. With sustainable influencing construction related technologies and design, it's now zero point 0.5 to 0.55 kVA per 100 square feet. So actually 50% down from what it was 10 years ago. Having said that, going forward, even if we look at the EV initiative, we will do more than 50% of our parking spaces, for example, which will allow for EV connectivity and charging points. The challenge is different. The challenge is uh, car parks, the more you increase them, the more pollution you're influencing. You have to encourage public transport systems, which are moving towards energy efficient, renewable energy resources cumulatively. And already that volume of infrastructure is just not available. We can do whatever we can on our footprint, but for that to work on the mass scale, it needs to kind of spread out as a large format infrastructure play out. So it's very important that that plays out for us to realize our dream of EV100. Fortunately for us, because most of our clients are Fortune 500 companies and top global GCCs and GICs, they are very, very aligned and excited if you tell them about renewable energy. The challenge is not about convincing a customer. The challenge is about delivery. I mean, if we were to ask the customer, suddenly 100% of our customers will come back and tell me, please give me 100% renewable energy. Can I provide that? Doubtful currently. I don't have the capacities to provide that. I don't have the resources and the accessibility to provide that. So we break it up into two parts. What more can we do to make the buildings far more sustainable and bring that energy consumption footprint down? That itself is a huge victory. And then access the renewable energy, which is hopefully growing in terms of its size, so that we can meet
Yeah,
both these objectives. So that's really where our
thank
focus is for the next 2 to 3 years. And we are
great.
actually working very closely with top clients globally who are looking at that mandate and are helping us working together to ensure that they contribute as well as we do to bring that infrastructure on the table.
Thank you, Vinod. Um, Seema, would you consider a moment such as COP26 pivotal for Indian industries? What could the Indian industry give to COP26, and what would be the takeaway from it?
So actually, COP26 is a pivotal moment for mankind. Industry is one part of it because industry doesn't exist in isolation, right? No industry exists in isolation, none of us. So it is a pivotal moment. That's why for industry, because it is a pivotal moment for mankind. And I think what industry should, deliver at COP is a promise to really give greater aspiration, commit to greater aspiration. That would be really important. Industry should also deliver at COP and commit and promise to work on all kinds of externalities and internalize all externalities, be it carbon, be it water, be it nature based, be it also plastics. So it should actually commit to and actually move towards circularity, because more you do circular, less your footprint would be on the nature and the ecosystems. Further, it should actually commit to make its value chains very resilient. And finally, it should commit to collaborate across sectors, share learnings. What could industry take away from COP? I think, interestingly, I think one thing that we should take away as industry is to see how do we use the markets and the financial markets, also all kinds of markets, consumer markets, and how do we leverage the financial system to pull greater investments into India, to invest into building a greener and a more resilient and a carbon proof future for ourselves. I think that's something that we should focus on and showcase our intent and showcase that we really have a path and pull all the investments towards India. Thank you.
Absolutely spot on. Thank you, Seema. Prashant, my last question to the last panelist. What can be done by the government as well as industry to bring green finance and investments at scale into India?
No, all these projects are infrastructure projects and long gestation period, and then they need to be funded well. And so a couple of things which are required to be done, like in COP16, it was promised by the all developed countries to enable close to $100 billion funding by 2020, which has not yet seen the light of the day. I think probably that commitment should be a focus point in COP26 meeting going forward, because the availability of this kind of a funding is very, very critical for such kind of a project. The second thing is Indian renewable energy initiatives require close to 150 to 170 billion dollar every year funding, but the green energy market for the financing is seeing close to 15 to 20 billion dollar annually only. So government should come out with a deeper and more liquid funding options for such kind of a projects. Thirdly, Indian banks and financial institutions, they are raising low cost green bonds in overseas market, but when they are giving this kind of a products to Indian companies, the transmission is not taking place. So probably RBI or some regulators should look into it, that such kind of instruments are available at a lower cost as compared to the normal financing. And lastly, the financing of deep decarbonization projects for carbon capture and utilization, like European companies are providing to steel companies in Europe, ArcelorMittal or SSAB, to do this kind of a projects. Such projects are not viable unless and until certain money and financing is made available by the government. So I think government should come out with such kind of a policy initiatives to make easy financing and low cost funding available to the industry, so that such projects can be undertaken.
Thank you, Prashant. As we close this panel, I would like to thank all our speakers once more for their insightful inputs. It is time more Indian companies lead and invest in corporate climate action in the country. It was a great discussion today and very pleased to meet you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello all. Welcome to the Fireside Chat on Influencing India, Shifting Mindsets at Climate Week New York. We have today Bhumi Pednekar, an actor and an environmentalist who is known for her path-breaking work on promoting sustainability and raising the cause of the environment. She has her own initiative known as the Climate Warrior Initiative, wherein she propagates through her media and through her, her role as an influencer to raise awareness of climate change and force a difference in people's mindsets. Welcome, Bhumi, and welcome to Climate Week New York.
Thank you so much, Amir. Thank you so much for making me a part of Climate Week NYC 2021. I feel all the conversation that's going to happen with everyone on this platform is going to be very important. And I really, really hope that together we could make a huge impact.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. I think it's important that everyone, no matter in which aspect of life we are in, be it in finance and acting, I think all of us need to raise awareness and do more because it's the same planet that we live on. That's the one. We can change countries, but we
Absolutely.
can't change planets. And so I think that's something which is very important to work on.
Absolutely. I keep telling people that there is no planet B. This is our real home. The four walls that we live in isn't really our home. This planet is home. This is where we need to show our true love, our true patriotism. But yeah, let's get into the conversation because I know we don't have a lot of time. So we will keep it short, crisp, but impactful.
Sure. No, literally, we don't have a lot of time because if you see the way climate change is evolving and the way temperatures are rising around the world, I think it's important that we urgently act. So let's and so Bhumi, how did you get into how did you get start becoming passionate about the environment and get into environmental conservation? So, I mean, what give us a background about your journey in towards being a climate warrior?
Um, I think I started off really young. We all have learned about climate change and its effects in school. The conversation of climate change actually kind of really came onto a global platform in the early 90s. There were many committees set up. There was a lot of movement that was happening then, and in school we were taught about it. And I think growing up, I was somebody who had a lot of climate anxiety. I just didn't know that this was something that others were suffering with as well. And I would spend endless nights wondering, oh, what would happen when things dry up, when our planet heats up. You hear of things like a 1 degree rise in temperature would lead to flash floods, forest fires, droughts, mass migration, various areas that would be completely uninhabitable. There wouldn't be enough food, for our growing population. And everything that we were taught, everything that we'd heard of, I feel like we are living it today. And this is where my journey started. I can't think of a particular moment, but I think I have always been somebody who has been very aware, and I have always been very um, this has been one of the things that I've been the most passionate about, and I feel very fortunate that as an actor I have been able to lend my voice and the soft power that I have over changing mindsets to the cause.
Sure. No, I think that's very beautifully put. And I mean, I think I'm sure as all the audience knows that you're a self-made actor and a really a path-breaking actor as well in terms of the roles that you try to portray.
Thank you.
But in your role as a climate warrior, I mean, and not just yourself. I mean, let's say as an influencer or a celebrity, how do you think that what is the role that an influencer and a celebrity can play in India and globally in terms of advocating on in terms of climate advocacy?
I think the role is one that can be very, very impactful. If I speak specifically of India and what I do, cricket, actors, Bollywood is worshipped in India. People look up to us. The power is so much. If an actor gets certain haircut, there's an entire generation mimicking the same. So why can't we use our soft power, our various methods of communication? And today there's a lot more apart from our cinema. We have our social media. If we put all our tools together into bringing about a positive change, into highlighting the climate crisis that we are in, into highlighting the emergency that we are in, because I think we together can make a huge impact. And I feel very, very happy when I see various influencers speak about the crisis today, because a couple of years ago, I would be laughed at. When if I was in a group of people, I would constantly try and kind of make this the topic of conversation, because I truly feel that we are still not doing enough. But people just didn't take me seriously. And I feel very, very happy today when I see that, okay, at least that aspect of it has changed. We see a lot more influencers who have kind of taken the front foot, and but it still isn't enough. Like, we are nowhere close to what our actual goals should be. We are nowhere close to achieving our reducing our carbon emissions. We are nowhere close to still having a large part of our population who believes that climate change is not real and everything will be okay. And, it's the government's onus. But it isn't just their onus. We all together have to bring about a change, because I keep telling people this time and again that the if you truly love your family, and you do everything to provide for your family, to protect them, I don't think you're doing what's actually required. Protecting our future generations, leaving them behind with a planet that is abundant, green, that has enough resources, is our duty. And as an influencer, as an actor, I'm going to continue using all my tools, everything that I have, into drilling this conversation into as many heads as possible.
Oh, that's fantastic what you said. And I mean, if you think of it, in 20, we are one of the top 5 most affected economies in the world, or countries in the world, in terms of climate. And given the fact that we are home to a 1.3 billion people, the impact that has probably is one of the highest in the world in terms of, and the thing which a lot of people don't
Yes.
realize, because a lot of people believe that climate change, or let's say environmental protection, is a rich man's pastime, but actually it is something which is affecting the poorest of the poor people the most. And I was in
Yes.
Konkan last week, and I was talking to some farmers, and they are mango farmers, and they said that, okay, we're now thinking of producing bamboo. And I said, why? Because, oh, we need to adjust to climate change, because if there's an unseasonal rain, or if the sun is shines a bit a bit too much, the mango crop gets affected. So the farmers now are adapting, and are actually changing to plan for climate change. And I mean, now what we're doing is, I mean, what our aim right now is that we should become a zero carbon economy. We have to limit the temperature
Yes.
increase to 1.5 degrees. So again, I mean, there's no status quo, right? Already we are going higher than what we wanted to. But I mean, the question here is,
I mean,
climate group.
absolutely,
No, no, please go
we've
on, go on, go
already
on, go
reached
on.
a code red, right? We've already reached a code red, right? And as you rightly said, people think that this is a climate change is a concept. It's not a concept, it's a fact. It's just that we, as you I feel, human beings just believe in a life of convenience. So we just don't want to deal. We feel that, oh, it's in the far future. No, it's not in the far future. We are living it right now. Our deadlines are coming closer. I mean, when you hear things like a major city in India, Mumbai, the city that I'm born in, the city that I've lived in this city all my life. I've never seen a cyclone growing up. I've seen two in the last year. This is climate change. And it was a
True.
very, very overwhelming experience. There have been many, many forest fires. Our summers are getting hotter, our winters are getting harsher, our monsoons. I mean, there are flash floods in so many states in India right now. And, as you rightly said, there is a certain section of the society that is going to be massively impacted by this. And it is, unfortunately, the poor. And I feel it is our responsibility to make sure, as you rightly said, that we do not we have to become we have to control our carbon emissions. We have to make sure that we do not pass 1.5 degrees. I mean, with whatever that's happening right now, and not just in India, like across the world, California has had many, many forest fires. We are completely destroying our biodiversity. In 2019, when Australia was on fire, there were over a billion animals that were killed. Those images, they broke my heart. And that's when I start questioning the intelligence and compassion of humanity. But okay, I'm going to keep it short because I know
No,
we
no, that
don't have a
was
lot of time.
No, no, that was, I mean, I could really see your passion coming through in speaking about climate change. And I'm so, I'm a fellow climate believer. I've been on the board of
Right.
climate group since I was 28, 26, sorry. I was a young member on the board, and even currently with the World Economic Forum, where I'm a young global leader, we've been doing a lot of work. So we have a new we are doing a 1 trillion trees, so it's called onetree.org, of plant, so as to create carbon sinks. But
That's
coming back to climate
fantastic.
group, coming back to climate group, we work a lot with subnational governments, with state governments, with also central governments, with businesses, in order to limit emissions, bring in policies. We have a fantastic program called RE100, which gets companies to commit to use 100% renewable energy, EV100, so that they use electric vehicles 100% of their. But how? So that's, I think, where we are doing well. But I think through influencers such as you, through opinion makers such as you, how do we get the third party stakeholders? What I mean is citizens, common people who are actually most affected by climate change. How do we get them involved, and how do we make climate an issue? Like, I would love it that one day in India, an election is actually run not on caste but on climate change. How do we make that
Wow.
happen?
I mean, I think the only way we can make that happen is with a relentless amount of conversation, just not stopping. I mean, that's what's work. So I run a platform called Climate Warrior. The idea was to use my social media and, as I said, whatever tools I have into kind of drilling the conversation in every aspect of. So we also celebrate climate champions, we celebrate citizens and groups that are kind of trying to undo the damage that is done. But I feel with everything that you are trying to do, with everything that I'm trying to do, and everything that every climate champion that you're going to speak to is trying to do, we just need to talk. We need to create enough noise. We need to not give up. I mean, I draw so much inspiration from a Greta Thunberg, who literally, in the last few years, has made this a global issue, because this is like the biggest looming threat to our planet. There is nothing else that our world leaders, there's nothing else that us as individuals should be thinking about and worrying about, but um, uh, 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 but about the future of our planet. So, as an influencer and anybody who has a certain following, I think it is very important that everything about you reflects your take on this problem, your take on the climate crisis, your take on the climate emergency, right from your lifestyle choices to the things that you support, to the things that you read, to the things that you promote. Everything needs to speak about the emergency that we are in, because we truly are in one. Like, it gives me sleepless nights.
No, I'm glad that it gives you sleepless nights, because I think it's important that we need to really act. And I look forward, hopefully soon, to see you in a movie on climate change. And maybe
I hope
called
so too.
which really brings
I
these
hope so too.
issues. And thank you so much, Bhumi. It's been great chatting with you. I think Bhumi
Thank you.
Pednekar, the climate warrior, and I think I like the fact that you said we should talk and we should walk the talk. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes.
Thank you for coming, and I will be a very, very, I would say, an ardent admirer of your work going forward, and I'm certain that you will achieve a lot on this path that you're taking now.
Thank you so much. We are in it together, Amen.
Pleasure, really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Atul Mudliar. I lead the business initiatives for the Climate Group in India. While it's my great delight to say a few words at the end of this Hub Live event, I wouldn't want to miss thanking each one of you for joining us at the 13th edition of Climate Week New York. It has also been an honor for us to have had a distinguished set of speakers, each one of them a leader and a phenomenal influencer in their own way. What a pleasure it has been listening to each of them. Also, while each of them represented diverse backgrounds, diverse sectors, and perspectives and approaches to tackle climate problem, the common thread that binds them all is the unequivocal idea that a lot of work needs to be done on climate and that it needs to be done fast. Also, that businesses and governments alike, investors and people will need to join forces to accelerate climate action and do it fast. Most importantly, if we are to meet our goals in this climate decade, than our ambitions, and that our actions need to drastically increase. With this message, we call on businesses in India to join our network of RE100, EP100, EV100, and Steel Zero initiatives, which is a network of more than 300 companies globally who have made over 500 distinct climate commitments. We also call on states in India to join our Under 2 campaign, which is a group of over 260 subnational governments and regions. At the end, I would express my warmest thanks to our partner, the UK government, which holds the COP26 presidency. Today's event was held in partnership with the UK government in the lead up to COP26, which is happening in November this year. Last but not the least, a special thank you to the entire team at the Climate Group for this convening. With that, I draw a close to the event. Thank you again. Be safe.